Jed York technically is the owner of the 49ers, but he was given the team by his parents, Denise York and John York, the co-chairman of the 49ers, and they didn't really want to do the day-to-day business operations around Santa Clara. They gave it to their son when he was 27. But when things are going wrong, when things are hitting the fan, John York shows up. And today, John York showed up. We'll break it down, what it all means next on 49ers After Dark. Good evening. Welcome to 49ers After Dark, presented by the Sleeper app. We're your hosts, Grant Cohn, Jessie Naylor. Just a couple hours ago, I'm at practice thinking about what are Jessie and I going to talk about today? Well, there's injuries. You know, there's the Cowboys game. And then I'm just walking off the field and I'm like, oh, who is this distinguished old gentleman walking right by me? Oh, it's the co-chairman of the team, John York, the guy who'd rather not be here. He lives in Youngstown, Ohio, but when things aren't going so well, he shows up. He's done it. I don't believe he had to do it last year. They started off 5-0, but the previous few years when they started off slow, there would be a week where he'd be there. And I don't know if he had anything to say or if his mere presence delivered a message. How do you take John York showing up to practice the week after the mollywhopping, the shellacking, the embarrassment to the Chiefs?
First of all, I got two things to say. One thing is, I know that I didn't win yesterday's little contest on the show. But I feel like I've been the best contestant on the show, the four-man front, the whole time, right? So I just want to put that out there. I know that I don't have a trophy to show for it, but I'm the best. Everybody knows that.
I'll let you finish, but Jesse's been the best contestant of all time.
I also want to say, I do find it funny that somebody literally paid last night on the show and said, how long until John York shows up? In the very next day he showed up. That was a super chat from last night.
Maybe John York was the one who posted ironic. The super chat, laughing, knowing he was already there.
How do I take it? I take it how I took the last ones, which is there's concern coming from the front office, and they're there to put pressure on Shanahan and this team. And I also think that he's probably there to assess things. I mean, they're getting close to a trade deadline. He probably wants to see, like, hey, you know, who's hurt, who's not, what's the returns look like for these guys, and then what's the pulse of the team. You know, what's cool is he has something to compare it to. He has those previous seasons as data points, and so maybe he goes in today and is like, this is not like the other seasons. There's something clearly off here. We're not going to be buying anything at the trade deadline. They're not going to turn it around. So I think that there's multiple reasons for being there, but the main reason is obviously that they have a losing record. It's a disappointment, and he's there to put pressure on this team and Kyle Shanahan. That much is clear because he's done it two other times after they started out way slower than what they should have. So yeah, it's obvious why he's there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's there to assess. It's a 3-4 team. What can I determine about what's going on here? Is this a team that's going to turn itself around or not? But beyond him, his assessment, because you wonder how astute he is at judging a football team. I don't know. He's owned this team a long time. Just his presence sends a message, and not just to the coaches, not just to the players, but to the media, to the fans. I mean, I think it's as simple as showing that everyone's on notice. Like, if you had a boss who you never saw, who essentially didn't want to do the job and delegated all the things, and you had like an underboss who you really liked, but when things were going bad, that guy showed up, the top boss, and all of a sudden he's just hanging around the office, you'd notice it. And you'd wonder why. And is he looking at me? What is he thinking about me? Is he assessing my performance? I mean, it just seems like it puts everyone on edge. And maybe that's what the Niners need right now.
Well, I do find it ironic that Kyle low-key just did this to Brock allegedly in the locker room, and now John is doing the same thing to him. John wants the media to see him. He wants everybody to know that these guys are on notice. That's why he shows up and does it during practice. It's why he does it unannounced. I'm sure that it was unannounced, and it's why he's done it when they've been losing in the past. So Yeah, I do. I find it ironic that Kyle was doing something very similar to his quarterback, and 2 days later, he's got to deal with it from his upper management. So,
And don't forget, John York, not John Lynch. John and Denise cut a lot of very big checks this offseason because the way that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch sold the year to them was, look, we can't really afford to think about the future or try to get younger or try to, keep the salary cap flexible so we can make moves in the future. Like, no, we need to bring back everyone. We need to make Christian McCaffrey happy. We need to make Trent Williams happy. We need to give all this money to Brandon Aiyuk because we're going to win the Super Bowl, guys. 1, 2, 3 team. Let's go. And now it's 3-4. And if they lose to Dallas next week, like you're looking at a season that could spiral and a team that could tank. And I don't think like it's one thing to tank in 2020 after the first Super Bowl loss where Kyle's in year 4 and still feels like he's ahead of the curve and they've had some injuries. Year 8 after Super Bowl loss number 2 and all the money they've spent out, I don't think that a tank year is acceptable, although I'm just guessing, but John York's appearance, his cameo makes me feel like he would agree.
yeah, absolutely. Maybe he did, but I'm pretty sure after 2020, when they started out poorly, he wasn't there. And it's because the pressure wasn't on this team. Now, once they got healthy and they started out slow for the next 2 years or what have you, then yeah, it was an issue. And he was showing up. The 2-4 start, the 3-5 start, now the 3-4 start, because the expectations in all 3 of those seasons were high, in which the 49ers were going are supposed to be going somewhere. And so I do find it very interesting that he's there right a day after we made the joke, but it really shouldn't surprise us. We've seen this before. But I do want to reiterate a point about him being there, which is he was there the last 2 times. He can go off of what he's seen in the past. Grant, we talked about it all offseason during training camp, how something felt off and it was palpable. If you were there, you could feel it. People joked, they laughed, whatever. The reality is now everybody sees what we saw. We just got an early glimpse of it because we happened to be there a little bit more. You more than me, obviously. But there was a very palpable feeling. This should not be a surprise.
Yeah, it feels like a team that's losing maybe some belief in itself. Considering each time they face the Chiefs, it gets a little bit worse. That's the way I see it. And they missed the playoffs this year, man. If they lose to the Cowboys.
If they lose to the Cowboys, that's officially rock bottom. Officially rock bottom.
Yeah. And you'd think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have everlasting job security. You never know what people make very emotional decisions. And I'm not just saying that like that would be an emotional decision, but if the Niners season spirals out of control, they win 5 or 6 games, no one's safe. So there's some urgency in Santa Clara right now. I don't know what else to say about this, but again, if I were doing my job and all of a sudden my boss found it necessary to watch me every day, I would feel like that's a vote of no confidence.
I'm not saying they will fire Kyle or that they even should fire Kyle, but let's pretend they do fire Kyle. How much do you want to bet says it's John that has to do the firing and not Jed? Jed won't do it.
Do you think they would fire one and not both? I'd be nervous too if I were John. Like, would I get to keep my job? Kyle kind of hired me.
I think if they were to fire one, it would be John and not Kyle. Ironically enough, but they probably fire both. I guess I don't know. It's tough to say.
I just think it's funny that Jed York's the owner, quote unquote, but when things get serious, Dad shows up.
Yeah.
It seems like Jed's kind of like the kumbaya. Hey, we're all getting along. Are we an organization or are we a family? Or are we all best friends here? Do you guys want to hang out after work and have pizza? And then when things aren't going so well, you got to bring in the dad.
Well, they all did their like off season growing their mustaches and having fun with it. And it's clear that Jed and Kyle are buddies. You know what I mean? So.
And it's great. Like from Kyle's perspective, it's always nice when the boss is your friend. That way you don't have to worry about things. But it's rough when there's a boss on top of the boss who doesn't come by very much and isn't your friend. And he's watching.
Yeah, that makes it tough.
It makes it tough. Caesar the QB room says called it. LOL.
That's who, okay, so that's who it was. There we go. I knew somebody sent in the super chat.
Dazza says veterans on the team seem to suffer emotionally after the Super Bowl loss, and they've seemed flat this year and uninvested. So what will change next year for the vets, or is it time for a significant rebuild? I would have to say that this is what I was trying to talk about, and it slipped my mind. You brought it up. There is something emotionally off with this team. Emotionally, like the way Nick Bosa talks this year, I feel like he's the perfect microcosm of the attitude of this team. Nick, he is so disconnected.
The big difference between everybody's like, oh, well, they'll just bounce back because they did the year prior after a tough loss. But there was a major difference between those losses. When they lost to the Eagles, they had a reason to think that they could get it done because they had Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy got injured in that game, and it was so unfortunate. But they had the future of Brock Purdy and all of that to look forward to. They felt like they finally had their quarterback. Last year, they walked the walk. They beat Philly. They did all the things they were supposed to do. This was the best assimilation of a team that they had under the Shanahan era, or so they thought. And they were playing the worst Super Bowl version of the Chiefs, and they flat out got beat. And they can say what they want, but they know in their heart of hearts, and if they didn't, they definitely know now, we can't beat that team. We cannot beat that team, and there's nothing that we can do about it. That's demoralizing when you know that most likely the team that you would face in the Super Bowl if you were going to get there is the team that you cannot beat.
And, again, like 2020, 2019, they lose the Super Bowl. 2020, they go 6-10. But they get the benefit of the doubt because it's early in their tenure and their starting quarterback got hurt week 2 and Nick Bosa got hurt. So it's like, whoa, those are their two most important people. This year, yeah, the offensive player of the year is out, and so is Brandon Aiyuk, but your starting quarterback is there. Nick Bosa is there, and you've still been favored in every single game so far. The team is still good, and yet you're 3-4. Like, it's a quandary, and it merits the top level dude showing up so he could figure it out for himself. I'd love to know what his report's going to be for Denise.
Well, when you looked at the schedule and how it broke down, this was supposed to be the easy part of the schedule, Grant. This was supposed to be they start 6-2 and go into the bye week and everything's good. Like 6-2, maybe 7-1. Like that's the way that people viewed it. It's like, well, you're not going to lose to Dallas. You're not going to lose to Seattle. You're not going to lose to the Cardinals. You're not going to lose to the Jets, the Rams. You know what I mean? Like all these teams, it was like, okay, so then maybe you lose to Kansas City, but maybe you get it done. Maybe they start out 8-0. Nobody saw 4-4 coming. If they did, kudos to you, but that was not the way this season was supposed to start. It's the second half of the season that's supposed to be the tough part. That's when you go to Buffalo, when you go to Green Bay, when you play Detroit, when you have those division games. It's not getting easier. That's for sure.
I'm trying to see what I had him at this point when the schedule came out. I'm looking at this was May 25th. I had him winning week 1, winning week 2, losing week 3, winning week 4, losing week 5, 3-2, winning week 6, losing week 7. It was at 4-3, and then beating the Cowboys. So that would be 5-3 at the bye. They're.
I think I had them 6-2.
Yeah.
So
I was the one guy who had him losing to the Cardinals because I've been a big Kyler Murray guy forever. But
you were right.
Barely. Ravi says, "Are we going to back to the dark ages? Grew up watching the Nolan era, scared to go back." I feel like people that are very against the idea of moving on from coaches, like super against it, often go like, "Well, who do you want? Jim Tom Sula, Chip Kelly, Mike Nolan?" I don't think that's necessarily the choice here, but I don't know for sure. I think good coaches would want to coach this team and this organization. I don't know.
Yeah, Ben Johnson, Brian Flores. I mean, there's guys.
Although, firing Harbaugh kind of made a lot of people feel like, damn, if you're going to fire him, what chance do I have to make it here? And if they move on from Kyle, maybe his peers would feel similarly. I don't know. I don't like saying this guy's name because I don't really know what it means, and it's gross. It says another reason I dislike Kyle trades up tremendously for a quarterback and states he was making plays for him on the ride back home, and then later says, I don't know how to use them. You mortgage the future for a project that you never started.
Yeah.
Never started the project. And
you literally were in class and was like, guys, I got it. Just show up on the day. I'll present. I got the whole thing. And then they showed up. They're like, so did you do the project? He's like, no, man, I didn't have time. Well, why didn't you tell us?
Yeah,
we could have gotten it done.
Yeah, it is what it is. I take full responsibility. Dustin the Gale says, I think it's high time for a Cohn phone this weekend. His fan base is in shambles.
He is right.
Yes. This is perfect time for a Cohn phone. I will bring the Cohn phone out this weekend. I promise. Okay. Yeah. If the 49ers beat the Cowboys, are they back? We've heard that a lot. Yes, we've heard that a lot this year. Sorry.
No, they're definitely not. They're definitely not back. The Cowboys, here's what we have to remember. What we are to the Chiefs, the Cowboys are to the 49ers. It's just a reality. And so the expectation is that you beat the Cowboys. Most Cowboys fans, I was reading through a thread today where like everybody in the media picked the 49ers, and it was a thread full of Cowboys fans who are like, yeah, they're right. Oh, the game. Actually, the only thing they're wrong about is that the score is too close. Like they all expect to lose that game. Like most of us expected to lose to the Chiefs. So the expectation is that you beat the Cowboys. Even if you're as bad as you can be, like the Cowboys are a team that cannot beat the 49ers. So no, it doesn't mean they're back. And in fact, after watching, and this is kind of nice because after the bye week, you go to Tampa, and Tampa is going to be without their top two players, arguably, and their receivers, and Evans and Godwin. Now you got a real chance there, especially if you get CMC back, you get that boost. So you can get your first 2-game win streak of the season. I don't think you're back if you win those 2 games, but it sure does help get you kind of going in the right direction as you head into Green Bay, Buffalo, Detroit, like those types of games. To me, to be back, they're going to have to win 2 games in a row, and one of those games is going to have to be against a team with a winning record, at the very least, to think that they're back. I said after the Chiefs loss, you're not roping me back in. I don't care what you do from here. I'm a fan. I'm sure I can get roped back in if I'm, if everything goes amazing the rest of the season, but I just don't see that happening. So no, they're not back if they beat the Dallas Cowboys. Absolutely not.
Let me just remind people what the Niners did to the Cowboys last year at home. They won 42-10. Brock Purdy was 17-24 for 252 yards and 4 touchdowns and no picks. Like that, he hasn't had that kind of a game in a while. He was like that.
Dak Prescott, probably the Cowboys. Yeah.
Dak Prescott 14-24, 153 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks, 3 sacks. Like I don't see the Niners. If the Niners do that again, I'll say I don't care that it was just the Cowboys. Like you finally played as well as your team from last year. Like what's discouraging about the way they lost to the Chiefs is that they played the Chiefs better in the Super Bowl. And you could say, well, McCaffrey wasn't there. Well, yeah, well, Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco weren't there. I mean, both teams were hurt, and the Chiefs were just more prepared, better coached, all of that, and they were underdogs. So. Yeah, if they stomp the Cowboys, I'll give them credit. Otherwise, it's really like if they lose to the Cowboys, it's hard to see how they emotionally, mentally bounce back from that because, like, you heard Nick Bosa laughed at the Cowboys. They're like, we do great against them. Like, if you can't even beat the Cowboys, how do you take yourself seriously?
Yeah, I think what's discouraging about this team this season is that really outside of the Jets game, which was week 1, they've given a chance to every team to come back. So the Vikings, they weren't winning that game, but after that they played, who'd they play after that? The Rams. The Rams, they had the lead, they gave them a chance, the Rams captured that chance, won the game. Then they played the Patriots, I believe. The Patriots, they gave them a chance. Brock Purdy threw the interception in the end zone when they were about ready to just take a insurmountable lead. Well, the Patriots just didn't have an offense, so they couldn't capitalize on the chance, but they were given a chance. Then they played the Cardinals. Same thing. Had the lead, had a turnover, gave them a chance. Cardinals came in. They took it from them. That was that. Seattle. They gave Seattle a chance. Remember, it was a one-score game. If Seattle goes after they're given the opportunity to come back in that game and scores that touchdown, they can take a lead, and that game could be completely different. So they keep giving these teams chances to hang around when they really shouldn't be. And so it's like, what is the impressive win? It's not just that they haven't beaten a good team, which is true also, but they haven't dominantly beaten anybody this year.
Not at all.
The Jets is the closest thing. In Seattle, it's like, yeah, you can look at the final score and say it was dominant, but there was a point in that second half where it was like, oh shoot, if Geno doesn't throw a pick right over the middle to Green, they could take the lead on that drive. And that was later in that game.
It's hard to dominate when you suck on special teams. And it's hard to dominate when it doesn't feel like you're a cohesive team yet. And maybe that's, I mean, you can't, there's no like firm evidence to point it out, but I feel like people that have been watching the team kind of feel like all these guys missed the offseason, all this drama. They just haven't gelled, and it's unclear whether this particular team ever will, the 2024 49ers.
Yeah.
They're talented, though. They're favored again this week. What a group. What a roster.
They are favored again this week.
Every week. And if they play the Chiefs again, guess what? They'll be favored again. Heaven knows why, but they will be. Okay. Aiyuk's out for the season. The Niners have a lot of wide receivers. He plays a specific position. He plays a lot of that X spot on the left side, on the back side of the formations where he's one-on-one against often the best cornerback. It's a tough spot to play because on the line of scrimmage, you got to be pretty strong and you got to be shifty, but you got to be able to use your hands to beat the press. You got to be able to beat the press some way or another. You can't just run by the guy. So who's going to step up in Brandon Aiyuk's absence? Who's going to fill the void?
Well, I think the obvious answer should be Juwan Jennings, right? We're talking about a guy who played extremely well. I mean, through the first 3 weeks of the season, he was one of the leading receivers in the league. Now he's hurt now, but we're talking about the rest of the season. He's going to be back at some point, whether it's this week or right after the bye. I would imagine, unless that hip injury, there's something really serious going on that we don't know about, which is also possible with the 49ers. But assuming he'll be back in the next game or two, it's going to be him. And I think what's nice about this is that if we can find a silver lining, Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, I think both would be best served as slot wide receivers. So whichever it is that wins that job, whether it's Pearsall or Cowing, they're going to be better when you give them two-way go options, when you can play them off the line of scrimmage so that they can't get pressed into an oblivion. And that's going to help both of them out and give them confidence as they go and navigate through their rookie year. So I think Juwan Jennings has got to be that X receiver. He's not going to do things exactly like Aiyuk, but he can do things that an X receiver can do, at least to help out his teammates and get them open and what have you. So
yeah, I'm with you on that. The one thing with Jennings, he doesn't have the speed you'd like to have from an X receiver.
Sure.
I mean, ideally, you'd like your X receiver to be Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones. And so he can't run some of those clear out routes that Chris Conley would run, but still the ability to get open on the boundary, make difficult catches. You're not really asking for a lot of yak from your X receiver. So I think he could step up, but I'm worried about his hip, man. The Niners are, I stopped listening to what they said about injuries at this point, because every time someone's injured, their tone is, oh, it's no big deal. And I'll say, and he'll be fine. And then he's gone. So he wasn't at practice today. I'd like to see him running around on the side field. I saw Debo running around on the side field. That makes me feel like Debo has a real chance to play this weekend. But Jennings, I haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. So I don't know if he's going to be stepping up. Maybe after the bye week. I don't know about this week. So I think it's interesting. Like, what about Ricky Pearsall? He's a first round pick. Can he play X, or can they move him around and play him in a different spot? And can he replace, at least if he can't replace Aiyuk's spot on the field, can he replace Aiyuk's production in the box?
This year's Aiyuk's production, or last year's Aiyuk's production?
This year.
Because probably this year's, maybe this year's.
But no one's going for 1,300 and no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the problem is that nobody on the team, including Aiyuk, was replacing last year's Aiyuk production. That's the real issue at wide receiver. And so when you look at it this year, it's like, okay, yeah, you're replacing Aiyuk, the name and the X receiver, but you're not replacing last year's production. And so that's where it gets interesting. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Ricky being in that spot, and maybe that's what they do. I just feel like it's asking for a lot. I mean,
I agree.
This last week he was suited up. It's really funny because somehow there was this narrative that was floating around that he had the best week of practice of all the wide receivers. And where? How? Because he didn't look like he belonged at times during training camp, and then he missed all the preseason. And then you're trying to sell me that he came back after 6-7 weeks off and was just amazing week one. Okay, maybe, but Jennings didn't play, and that's why I think he suited up. I think they would have preferred to not have him suit up for that game and probably suit up for this one, would be his first game back. And even then, it took injuries to Debo, sickness from Debo, and Aiyuk for him to really get on the field. And even then, it was still like, well, it's more Conley and Cowing and Bell, and then a little bit of Pearsall. So it's not like Pearsall just all of a sudden is wide receiver 3 even. He's going to have to battle it out with some of these other guys, a veteran, and then a rookie. And then I don't know why he would battle it out with Bell. Bell shouldn't be on the field, but Kyle seems to love him for whatever reason. So, there is that too.
It's funny. When we talk about replacing Brandon Aiyuk, we're talking about 3.5 catches per game this season. Right? So not a whole lot. And obviously, if Jennings is healthy, he's earned another target or two a game, some more snaps for sure. He should start. And Pearsall's a first-round pick. There's a lot of expectations on him. But to me, the move, if you take roster politics out of it, I love Jennings. Yes, he deserves more. Cowing deserves more too, though. And I don't care what position he plays, if he's in the slot, if he's a Z, if he's an X. I don't give a damn. He's currently averaging 25 yards a catch, and he's a threat on jet sweeps. He's a threat on screens. He's a threat on slants. He's a threat on slant and goes, stutter move. Like, there are things you can do with him, and I'm not saying give him 10 targets a game, but get him 3 catches, 3 catches. Yeah, and one of those is going to be a big play, and maybe a run too. Jacob Cowing needs to be a fixture in this offense now.
Yeah, I would say a run or 2 and 5 targets a game is totally fair. I'm with it. I'm totally with it. And that's where Pearsall should come in my opinion. Pearsall should be the punt returner.
There you go.
Well elevated Cowing. He can be your slot wide receiver. That's what I would love to do. I think that's a great idea.
I think Cowing's a much better receiver than he is a punt returner. I haven't seen much of a feel for him as a punt returner.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I feel anxiety exuding off of him as a punt returner, which is fine. I have anxiety even when I'm not returning punts, so I can't really knock him.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. It is the sleeper time to make the sleeper picks that we all love. Now, I've been really winning a lot, so please don't mess this up for me. Ryan got all 7 of his correct on Monday, so you have big shoes to fill now. Ryan's been winning a lot recently.
Okay, now I know why you gave him the show yesterday. This is all adding up. Yeah.
Okay, George Kittle, anytime touchdown. He didn't have one last week, did he? No. Against Dallas on primetime. Kittle's going to score a touchdown.
He has to. I mean, he wore the shirt last year. Yes, he has to.
He's questionable, though. But the nice thing about Sleeper, if you've never played, is if he doesn't play, they will nix. What's the word? That won't count.
We'll just remove it from the docket.
Remove is the verb I was looking for. Jordan Mason, struggling around the goal line. Touchdown. What do you think?
Dallas is so bad against the run. I got it. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know if it'll come from the goal line. I feel like he's going to break like a 30-yarder and get in.
Agree. Jennings, we could put him down for a touchdown, and if he doesn't play, but I don't know. I just don't feel confident.
I don't either. Yeah, I would rather not.
We'll leave that one alone. Purdy, we could do any number of things for Purdy. 245.5 passing yards, 31.5 attempts, 20.5 completions, a pick. Those are the ones.
Let's go pick and go less.
I like this one. Give me your thought process. Don't throw picks is the theme of the week for him.
Yeah. I think that. I think that I can't take Dallas seriously at all, for one. And I feel like Brock. We can say a lot of things about Brock, and we will later, trust me. But one thing you can't say is that he doesn't have mental toughness. To me, he exudes confidence even when things are going bad, I think, at times. And I think that he's hearing everything that's going on. I know he's hearing all the noise this week. There's no way that he's not. And I think that he's confident against Dallas. He's played them multiple times. He's played well against them multiple times. And this is a game where he's going to come out and be like, yeah, see, I'm still good. I got you. So I'm going to say he doesn't turn it over. Dak will turn it over.
Is Dak going to Dak?
If that was 1.5, I would say give me the more. Give me more.
Yeah, 4 picks in his last 2 games. Thank you, Dak. All right, CeeDee Lamb, yards or touchdowns?
Gosh, he's so hit and miss against the 49ers, man.
I don't remember him scoring a lot of touchdowns against the Niners. I feel like they do a good job against him. Am I tripping?
He doesn't even get a lot of yards usually. I think last year he kind of did because they just like fed him towards the end, a bunch of garbage yards, but
yeah,
he struggles in everything against 49ers. What's the catches? We have that.
They don't, for whatever reason.
Okay, I'll just go less on the touchdowns then. I feel safer. I could see him like getting a bunch of garbage yards.
Okay, Rico Dowdle, will he score a touchdown?
No.
If the Niners give up a touchdown to Rico Dowdle, the season's over. Jake Ferguson, touchdown.
No.
Okay, those are good picks. I like these picks. I could max it out, and I wish I had earlier this week with Ryan, but that's the first time I've ever gotten every single one right. And this is Jesse I'm playing with. So,
oh wow, okay, all right.
All right, those are the picks. You want to play? Download the app, promo code Cohn, COHN, and get entered to win this signed Ricky Pearsall jersey before he absolutely breaks out with 300 yards and 8 touchdowns this weekend. You're going to want to get it now at the Sleeper app, promo code Cohn. Okay. Brock Purdy throws 3 picks, loses to the Chiefs. Niner fans are upset. They were really hoping to break through against the Chiefs, and now it looks like they might never. They might never. And Brock was the one who turned the ball over the most, and people have really been getting their takes off. Like me, people like me have been getting takes off about Brock Purdy this week. Are people just piling on for the sake of it?
Yeah, I think that the perception is he just had one bad game, guys. He just had one bad game. I think the people that are really protective of him, that's what they're standing on. It's just one bad game. He's had a great season. It's a bad game. He's had a great career. Like, it's easy to pile on after a bad one. But the reality of the situation is this is not a bad game. This is a pretty big trend. And it doesn't matter how you look at it. You could look at it. Let's take the season as a whole right now. We're 7 games in. This is a 7-game sample size. He has 33 starts in his career. This is about 20% of his career starts that we're talking about here. Okay. So in that time span, he has 11 touchdowns and 9 turnovers in 7 games. Well, that's not good. And that's, a 7-game sample size. We can do well, listen, last week was a bad game. Let's remove that game. We can remove that game. But if we're going to do that, to be fair, and a lot of people that take data will do this. They'll like remove your best and remove your worst and then give you an average. So let's remove his best and his worst game and see what the other 5 bear out. Well, his best game was against Seattle 2 weeks ago. His worst game was against Kansas City. So we've got a 5-game sample size. What does that tell us? 6 touchdowns, 6 turnovers in 5 games. That's not very good. All right, well, let's go to the last 12 games. That was the stat that came out the other day. Last 12 games, he has 12 interceptions. That's just interceptions. We're not even including fumbles. If we go turnovers, we're talking about minimum 15 because we know that he has 3 this year. So minimum 15 turnovers, maybe more in the last 12 games. Okay. Well, let's take it a step further. And again, 12 games is not a small sample size for somebody who's only played 30-something games in their career. And Brock Purdy, that's a third of their games. But Brock Purdy, outside of his rookie year, has played 26 games and has 23 turnovers. A lot of people, especially Brock supporters, because it happens all the time in my channel, being a Josh Allen supporter, I know. will say things like, Brock just had himself a Josh Allen kind of day. Well, in those same 26 games, Josh Allen had 24 turnovers and Brock has 23. So if Josh Allen is turnover prone with his 24, wouldn't that make Brock Purdy turnover prone with his 23?
The difference is that Josh Allen is scoring more touchdowns than anyone else in the league.
16 more touchdowns over that span than Brock Purdy had. So Brock Purdy has like 48 touchdowns to 23 turnovers. Josh Allen has 64 touchdowns to 24 turnovers. So, and then you can take it a step further. What was Brock Purdy in college? He turned the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
People got mad at you in practice. Oh, it's just training camp. So he was that in college. He was that in training camp. He's been that really since his rookie year. It doesn't matter how you slice it. He turns the ball over too much. This is not people piling on after a bad game. What this really is people saw this bad game and they said, hold on a second. Let's start really looking into things here. It's like all of a sudden you get audited by the IRS for your taxes. And it's like, well, it's just one bad year where I didn't turn in my taxes. They're like, well, yeah, but now that we started looking at things, it's like, you haven't been turning things in or doing stuff right for the last 10 years. Like, that's what's happened here is people are just like, has he really been good? Has he been bad? What's the sample size? And it's been all over his film this year. This is who he is right now. He's got to turn it around, but this is not one bad game, Grant. This is who he's trending to be.
And you look at his numbers this year, his quarterback rating is 91. Well, that's not good. And then you like, okay, well, what if you extend it back to last season, through the playoffs, back to the Ravens game? You go back to Christmas, his quarterback rating is 87. So this is a trend that's been happening since Santa Claus was gracing everyone's house except for the young Jewish men and kids. Everyone besides Kyle from South Park that's when things went bad for the 49ers, for Brock Purdy. So something's been going on with him for a while. And I feel like I think the same thing happened to Jimmy. So that's why I keep coming back to Kyle. I feel like we saw this happen to one of his quarterbacks before. Hot start, a lot of wins, great numbers, go to the Super Bowl, kind of limp into the Super Bowl, at least from the quarterback perspective, lose, and then a steady decline. And it'd be interesting to sort of compare Jimmy's career trajectory to Brock's. Clearly, Brock is a harder working, better athlete, but will he be ultimately a more successful quarterback than Jimmy was under Kyle Shanahan? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. I just think, yeah. I mean, 49ers are at such a crossroads right now. If this season goes south, it really, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered with the coach, the quarterback, everything. Yeah.
Let's say they decide that Brock Purdy's not their franchise quarterback and they want to trade him. They do what, maybe the Dolphins should have done with Tua, whatever. They decide, no, we're going to trade. I guess what Washington ultimately decided with Kirk Cousins. What's he worth? And which teams would absolutely abandon whatever they're doing at quarterback to trade for Brock and pay him?
I think this is what's tough is that usually quarterback needy teams are going to be near the top of the draft, and teams are more excited to draft the unknown rookie than a guy who's been in the league and producing under Kyle Shanahan. Like, regardless of what our thoughts are of Kyle or your thoughts are of Kyle, the league does revere him as a good play caller and an offensive guy. And so when a quarterback plays well under him, I think that they give that quarterback like the Kyle Shanahan boost. What would he be though here? And
the Raiders learned that one the hard way with Jimmy.
Right, exactly. And so I don't know, man. I don't know that he has great value across the league. Maybe somebody would give up a couple seconds for him. Maybe.
I mean, the Panthers need a quarterback, but is Brock Purdy going to turn them around? The Raiders need a quarterback, but they already tried with Jimmy Garoppolo, and now Tom Brady's their owner, and he couldn't use the word average enough when he was talking about Brock Purdy the other day. I don't think they would go for him. I mean, I don't think the Cardinals would move off of their guy. I mean, maybe the Rams would like Brock Purdy after Stafford retires. I don't think there's that many teams that are looking at Brock Purdy as a franchise savior, including the Niners.
Well, the argument that I've been making is that make him play out his rookie year. And I did a NFC West roundtable yesterday, and the Seahawks guy asked me a really good question. He says, "Well, do you think Brock would go for that?" And I said, "What choice does Brock have? If they put him on the open market, do you think any other team across the league is genuinely going to offer him $50+ million? My guess is absolutely not. So what are you going
Which
to do?
team? I'd love to know which team would do that.
No team. I don't
And
think.
which team would trade the Niners a first round pick for him? I'd have to hear a team. I'm looking at the chat. Does anyone in the chat have a suggestion? The Rams? I don't think the Rams want him. I don't think the Seahawks want him. Again, like you said, if the Niners give up on a quarterback and decide he's not worth it, we want to trade him. I think a lot of teams like, well, if Kyle's giving up on him, we're not going to do better with him than Kyle did. I mean, look at these numbers that he produced with Kyle. He's not going to produce numbers like that with me.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny because going into this year, I made a comment about JJ McCarthy that a lot of people disagreed with, and I said I would guarantee you that if you give any team in the league that is quarterback needed the option to spend their first round pick on Brock Purdy or JJ McCarthy, they'll take JJ McCarthy.
I feel it. I'm getting some suggestions from the chat. They're saying Jets, Dolphins, Titans. Jets, Dolphins, Titans, getting a lot of those. Cleveland, Saints.
Maybe the Titans. The Titans I could see because but it's what does Carthon think of him? What does he actually think of him? That's what it comes down to. If he liked him, I actually could see the Titans possibly doing that. I don't think the Jets would. Absolutely not. And the Dolphins have Tua. No, I don't think either of those teams would.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see if Kyle Shanahan could pivot to Jed and John York and say, look, this quarterback that you thought you were going to be making the highest paid player in franchise history, let's trade him.
Mike wasn't here when Purdy was here. That's the other thing for the Dolphins, right? Like McDaniel wasn't here when Purdy was here, right? They didn't cross paths. So he doesn't know Purdy. So there's no reason for him to be like, yeah, give me that guy.
Part of me does feel, though, that like Brock is a victim of Kyle to a degree. I know it seems weird because Kyle pumps these guys up and builds them up, but I feel like he builds them up to knock them down. He has you believe in you're the best quarterback in the league, and then by the end of your tenure with him, you're like in therapy. You've lost all confidence. Like Jimmy Garoppolo went from being the most confident quarterback irrationally in the league to being one of the least confident, and it happened in about 3 years. And I just feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Brock was more confident in the past than he is now. He's running around. I don't think he knows what he wants to do.
Will you do me a favor? Because you have a much bigger following than me, and I want the biggest sample size possible. Will you post a poll on Twitter that says one of them has to go at the end of this year? Brock or Kyle? Who are you choosing to leave or stay? However you want to word it. I'm curious.
If one of them has to go after this season, who should it be?
Kyle or Brock?
Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy. If one of them, how about if one has to go after this season, who should it be? Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy. Boom.
And retweet it's a poll, right? You made it a poll?
Right. I guarantee you it's going to be like 75% to 85% Kyle.
Kyle, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Niner fans like Brock, and Niner fans are getting annoyed with Kyle. There is a vocal minority of Kyle defenders that are loud and persistent on social media, but I think most Niner fans are starting to side-eye this guy. Jesse's in the process of retweeting. I can see it in his face.
Yes, I am. I am retweeting. I'm finding and retweeting. There we go. And voting.
The thing about Brock is like why this turnover issue is a problem is because like people say like, well, Brett Favre threw a lot of picks or Josh Allen turns the ball over. Like those are some of the most prolific players in terms of scoring. Like they're good would outweigh their bad most of the time. Brock's not that kind of guy at all. He needs to be efficient.
Jordan Love's low key turning into those guys where it's like he's turning the ball over twice a game, but he's also getting like he has in 2 less games like 5 or 6 more touchdowns already than Brock, but he has a lot of turnovers too.
Stafford was that way when he won the Super Bowl. Like he led the league in interceptions when he won the Super Bowl. Like it's okay for certain guys, but not for Brock. He's 0-5 in games where he throws 2 picks. So you for sure can't throw 3. You need to be. I know everyone's like, he's not a game manager. He's a gunslinger. No. You manage the game.
Yeah.
Manage the game. That's your job. Don't lose it. Stop losing the game. Nick Wright had this stat, and I don't have it perfectly, but he basically went and tallied up like when Brock has all of the Avengers, meaning McCaffrey, Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle, Juszczyk, and Trent Williams. I don't think Juszczyk counts as an Avenger, but when all those guys are healthy, he's like 13-1 with a quarterback rating like 130, something like that. And then when one of those guys is out, he's got a record below 500 with a quarterback rating way low. So that's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I get it. Like in a lot of those games, more than one of those guys would have been out. So like when you're looking at this year, but we saw a small sample size last year. And even I was like, hey, listen, you can't look at that 3-game stretch that he had last year without Debo and Trent and be like, oh, this is who he is. It's too small of a sample size. But now you're getting a bigger sample size. And again, we're trying to gather data. The ultimate point is Brock Purdy worth paying? Like that's the storyline or season within the season. Like we're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're hoping the 49ers win a Super Bowl, but the other part of the season is Brock Purdy worth paying and making that decision at the end of the year? Like both of those things are just as important. Maybe actually paying Brock Purdy or not paying him is more important because you're talking about mortgaging your future potentially if this isn't the right guy. So that's something that has to be discussed on a regular basis. And so every game is a data point that goes towards this.
I got a comparison for me. Like we're looking at Brock, like, is he worth it? And it's contingent on, does he win the Super Bowl and stuff? To me, he's so much like Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, I thought, was a great quarterback, even though he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. Man, he was so good. And he was such a big reason why they won a Super Bowl and why they went back to the next one, even though he ultimately lost it with that throw at the goal line. They had 3 years sample size. He went to back-to-back Super Bowls. He checked all the boxes. They gave him the contract. It was one of the biggest mistakes they made in franchise history because he wasn't worth it. And they had to gut their team for it. And they had this slow slide into mediocrity. And it took them years to understand that they needed to give up and move on from it. And they're still kind of stuck in mediocrity. So that's what I feel like. Brock's really good, but is he that much better than young Russell Wilson? I don't know. And if you give him that kind of money and say, you're the best player in the team, carry it. Can he do it? I don't know. So that's where I'm at with Brock. Like he kind of feels like Russell Wilson 2.0. And I love Russell Wilson to this day, but not at that price. To this day.
I think there is a lot of similarities. In fact, after we beat the Seahawks, I had talked to my Seahawks buddy. I'm like, how does it feel to be on the other side? Like we have our version of Russell Wilson right now, which is back-breaking runs every time you feel like you got a chance and you just can't beat them. And that's how we felt for years. So welcome to it. He's the Seahawk killer for sure. And there is a lot of similarities there. A lot of similarities actually in stature.
Now Russell had a
short area quickness,
bigger arm,
way better arm, way better arm. Yes.
Of course.
But as far as like short area quickness and size and all, there's a lot of similarities there. There really is.
And again, Russell won the Super Bowl. That was a mistake, that contract. This guy says, you don't like saying my name? Not really.
Because I don't know what it is. I know. Every time he super chats with me too, I'm like, I don't even know. I'll just say it, but I don't know what it means. I feel like am I going to get canceled for this? I don't know.
JDM 408 says, nah, you guys are wrong. Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback whisperer. He whispered in Trey Lance's ear, run up the middle. Trust me. Adam K says, Grant, Jesse, I told you over the summer the vibes were different this year and they wouldn't make it. Last year's loss was devastating and it's tough to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say this though. I agree with you, and I do feel like this year's different. But I will put this out there: the last time they started 3-4, they lost to the Chiefs, much like they have here. And CMC had just joined the team, and the next year was his first week really with the team against the Rams. Well, this year they've got Dallas, which is, I mean, they own Dallas. And then after that, CMC is likely going to be back. So there are some similarities. I think it's different. I think CMC is a great name. I don't think we can guarantee on him being the same. And the vibes have been off all offseason as well. There's something going on for sure.
I don't know. I still come back to Bosa. I think Bosa is the microcosm of the messed up vibe, and I think it started when they lost the Super Bowl. They ran that zone read at him on purpose. He comes
Mhm.
out and was like, "We weren't prepared for that play. It wasn't my fault." And they blamed the coach and they fired the coach. Bosa essentially fired a coach. And
Mhm.
then he comes back this year, and once again, things aren't getting better. I mean, they're not better without Steve Wilkes, and he's just like has this air of like he's above everything. Like the team is 3-4, but he's at his locker with his sleeves rolled up, and he's like messing with his hair and stuff. It's like, dude, like you're just the overpaid, underperforming dude on the team that's not that good. Like, what are you posing for, man? It just his whole attitude is like, oh, I'm not messing up. I'm still a star. Like, none of you guys are stars. You guys are just you're all messing up. I think he is acting like he's detached from it. It doesn't reflect on him. It reflects on him more than anyone.
Do you think Bosa is still giving the Saturday speeches like he was last year?
I'm down on him, man. We gave him that media award last year. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, he was like, you know, he was professional and he was helpful, but he's so about himself. He's all about himself. And I feel like someone like George Kittle is just as helpful with the media. And he's a little bit more of a character. And maybe he's not as authentic, but like he's a good teammate.
Yeah, I think George is a really good teammate as well. He's super annoying, but he's a good teammate.
He's super
Bosa,
annoying,
Bosa. What I do like about Bosa though is that he is kind of the pulse of the direction of the team, though. Right? I mean, every Wednesday we look forward
good
to
and
his
bad.
interview. Exactly, we look forward to his interview when he talks about the opposing quarterback and the opposing team. You know how the team feels based off of what he says. It's very real. It's very straightforward, and also you know how the team feels based off his post-game interviews when they lose. He's like, listen, they can have the false bravado and tweet at whoever on X and such team about whatever, but Bosa's keeping it real, and everybody knows, okay, this is the pulse of the team based off of what Bosa says on Wednesday and Bosa says after the game. So I do like him for that.
He keeps it real though, like he's an independent contractor and not like he's a member of the team. Like if I was on the team, I don't think I'd
Yeah.
like being his teammate, and I don't think I'd want to be his friend. But maybe I'd appreciate him when he's getting sacks. Does Leonard
Yeah,
Floyd have
like
more
a
sacks than
hired
him?
gun. Maybe, I don't know.
Dustin
Well,
the
yeah, I don't
Gale
think you
says,
read the last one. There you go.
"Oh, sorry. Is even 30 million for Brock worth it? If we can't win the Super Bowl, paying him 1 million. Why continue? It seems like the winning formula is to have a world beater quarterback keep searching with new regime."
I think the world beater quarterback or the inexpensive quarterback is the answer. So right now
Here's
they
the
have the
reason
inexpensive quarterback.
not to move on from Brock too hastily. Look at what Baker Mayfield's doing in his late 20s. Look at what Jared Goff is doing in his late 20s, early 30s. Like maybe if you just get the right coach, you can maybe Brock's got enough. Like no one wanted Jared Goff 3 years ago when Sean McVay threw his hands up, but Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell did a damn good job with a guy who's like mid. And now you're like, well, maybe with this team, they can maybe on with this coaching staff and this team, they can win with him. So that's my one hesitation with Brock. The Brock and Kyle partnership, I'm souring on. But if you had to pick one, I'd be interested to see what Brock looked like with. I won't say his name. I've said his name like 18 times the last couple of days. I won't say it.
Okay. So, but I don't disagree with that as far as player comps. But let's look at their cap number this year for those guys. First of all, Jared Goff out of the two is the only one that actually has a chance to win a Super Bowl this year. And his cap number, I know he has a big cap number normally or going forward, but his cap number this year is only 27 million. That's why the Lions still have a chance this year.
Yeah, it's true.
That's why the Lions
Now
still
he's
have a
going to
chance.
get expensive in a couple of years, but Ben Johnson will be gone.
For sure. And at that point, they'll have to figure it out. And the other one was Baker, right? Why did I not even see Baker on here? Is he that low?
I think he's at 33 million a year. I think he signed a 3-year, $100 million contract, but I don't know what his cap number is this year. Probably lower.
6.9 million.
Yeah.
Golly, man. So, there you go. Like that's I mean, if Brock's cap number is 27 million, like sign me up for sure. Yeah. I'm all about that. I'm totally fine with that. But if it's, I don't know, 49 million, 47 million, like Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, and then escalates going forward. Like, no. Dak Prescott's 46 million this year or 44 million? Absolutely not.
Aru Illustri says Alex Smith had a great statistic. The position that hits most in the draft is O-line. Fire sale at trade deadline. Build through the line, build the line through the draft to develop Brock Purdy. Run is back. 3.0 is a pipe dream.
You're speaking my language.
I think it's interesting that the Chiefs made a decision a couple of years ago. Like, look, Patrick, you've been the MVP. You've put up incredible numbers. We're now going to build our team differently. We're not going to spend on wide receivers or running backs. Sorry, your numbers are going to go way down. We're going to spend on defense and offensive line. We're going to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. Are you in? And he's like, yeah, sure. And now people are actually seriously talking about he's not that good anymore. He's having a down year. Like, no, this is how they're built. He signed off on this, and it's working. They haven't not won a Super Bowl since they decided to do this.
That's true. That's
freaking working. More teams should consider it. Rodman Sanchez says, why is no one talking about Bosa's contract? How many sacks does he have so far this year? 3.5, highest paid player on the team and barely makes an impact. He's MIA in the playoffs and Super Bowl. I've been talking about Bosa. I feel like we talk so much about Aiyuk. I mean, Purdy gets a lot of scrutiny. Shanahan, Bosa's the highest paid player in the organization. He deserves it.
It's fair.
Adam K. Truth is, Kyle's offense has been figured out by defenses. That's where the problem begins, and the frustrating thing, he won't adapt.
Marco, I was talking with Marco, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. But he broke it down by personnel that's on the field and how obvious it is what the 49ers are doing. It was like in 11 personnel, they run 77% of the time.
No, pass.
And when you look, or past 77%, yes. And when Mason broke his big runs, it was in 11 personnel this last week because probably the Chiefs didn't expect it. So
this is what I was saying. Like when I said go to 11 personnel, I didn't say go there and throw 80% of the time. Like you should be balanced out of 11.
Yeah.
Just the way that the Packers are. Because the way I look at Jawan Jennings, to me, he's a tight end. He's running tight end routes. You line him up close to the formation, but you can't match up with him with a linebacker. You have to put a DB on him. So now you got the nickel defense out there, and that's a smaller, softer defense. It should be really vulnerable to get rushed on if you actually committed to it. Which they don't. It's annoying. Yeah. Adam K. Jesse, I just sent you a graph on Twitter comparing Jimmy and Brock. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how to read.
It's good. Send it to me. Corey Wiggs says Packers hired Saleh as a consultant. Saleh was the best man at LaFleur's wedding, or vice versa. I forget which one, but they're closer than Saleh and Kyle, I believe.
Yeah, they're really, really good friends. Did they hire him? I know he showed up at practice. I don't know I heard they hired him. Yeah.
Kilo TW says Kyle's play calling is too predictable and Soren Staley is self-explanatory. I like a nice punchline. Kilo TW says the problem is lazy coaching. They tried to wing the season with talent and it backfired. Here's my thing with Sorensen. They interviewed him last year for the job. They were like, ooh, you're not ready. You're not good enough. We're going to bring in Steve Wilks. They get mad at Steve Wilks. They fire Steve Wilks. Fine, fire Steve Wilks. The replacement is Nick Sorensen, who you decided wasn't good enough the year before, and now he's good enough? No, we can see now he's not good enough. He's not an upgrade over Steve Wilks. You were right the first time.
We're an hour in. I don't know that we're going to get to more topics, but one of the topics we did have lined up was Jerry Rice and his comments. It's interesting because they got rid of Wilks, and a lot of the reason why I think they got rid of Wilks was, remember the effort that we saw in the NFC Championship, and everybody was pissed off, and then it's like, well, no way they're going to do that in the Super Bowl. Jerry Rice questioned their effort and their heart this week. It's like, well, Wilks is no longer here, but Kyle still is. And so why is there still effort issues? Are we going to put it again on the defensive coordinator, or is it like, do we go higher up? Like, at what point do we just realize, like, this is kind of what's being allowed at this point, and it comes down to the leadership all across the board?
Can you imagine if the Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Brent Jones 49ers had a 5-game losing streak to one team, and it was getting worse, and they lost to him in multiple Super Bowls? How they would act and talk after the latest loss? I mean, they wouldn't be like Nick Bosa, like rolling up their sleeves, fixing their hair. Like they'd be flipping out. Jerry Rice, Steve Young would be flipping out.
Yeah, Jerry Rice was like, we would be fighting each other if that had happened to us.
Belichick 2025 says, can one of you please try to do a show with JT O'Sullivan and dig into Kyle's scheme? I haven't watched his show this week. I heard it's phenomenal. He does a great job.
He does do a good job. I had him on the show before. I can reach out to him again and see if he's got time.
That's cool. Niners signed a center. Did they? I think they did. I don't know. I'll be sure 28 says, do you think Robert Saleh spurned Kyle Shanahan to work with Green Bay? Thoughts?
I don't know that he was asked necessarily to work with Kyle or consult for Kyle. So I doubt it.
I don't know. Harry Doyle 49 says, do you think the media's coverage of Kyle and Brock's locker room discussion further supports the players' argument to keep the media out? On Monday morning, every podcaster was a body language expert. No. Kyle did that on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
They didn't have to do that conversation in the locker room. They could have walked around a corner right next to Brock's. Kyle wanted people to see that, just like Kyle wanted people to see him telling Brandon Aiyuk to change his shorts. I believe
just like John York wanted everybody to see that he was at practice today.
Yep. Well, we didn't get to our plans to fix the 49ers. We didn't get to our best case scenario, worst case scenario. Guess we'll have to keep you waiting for next time. This is going to be stuff we can get to next week. I mean, best case to me feels like 10 wins in an NFC West win, but I don't see him. I don't even know if they make it back to the NFC Championship game this year. I feel like divisional round might be their ceiling.
Yeah, I think 10 wins, NFC West title, divisional round, that's the ceiling. And I think 7 wins is the floor, which is crazy. If you would have asked me before the season, I would have said 12 wins, NFC Championship was the ceiling. I thought that they could get to, and 10 wins, divisional round was the floor. But now that's like the ceiling. I don't know.
They already have 4 losses. They got 3 more games against the NFC North teams and a game against the Bills. So
yes,
that could be 4 more losses right there, or it could be 2 or 3. So, I mean, worst case scenario is they lose to the Cowboys this weekend, and it just gets really bad. I mean, it just spirals out of control. It would be dramatic, and I feel like we get a lot of views that night, but then it would taper off hard. So I'm kind of rooting for the Niners this week. Like, can you collapse later? Not now. Later collapse.
I don't
October
think
collapses are interesting, but I don't want them.
People aren't. First of all, if they lose the Cowboys, people aren't watching 49er games, let alone giving a damn what we say. So, like, that's just the reality.
They'll watch for a couple of days to see like the wreckage, but then after that, all the casuals will tune out. And casuals are important. You need the casuals.
They might tune in to watch your post-game rants because you eviscerate people. So
that's true.
That might actually still.
I'll try to keep it entertaining just for Niner fans. Troy M, underrated argument for maybe moving on from Kyle. Sometimes a voice just becomes stale in leadership after a while.
No, that's very true. That's
very true. That is very true. Well, Jesse, thank you very much for doing a little bit earlier today.
Absolutely.
This was once again our best show of all time. 49ers After Dark keeps getting better.
Oh, it always is. It always is. And the normal 49er After Dark time, 9 p.m. Eastern. So in about 53 minutes, I'm doing Behind Enemy Lines with the Cowboy content creator over on my channel. So come check it out.
Go check it out. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow with the coach.